Hi there, this is Ronnie, Numbers 9, coming at you with another video. Really wanted to touch on the notion of what to do if you are a brand new gamer. If you've heard about this hobby, either by watching videos from the people on here, and there are very few, there are a lot of people, role players, giving advice on here, and I'm merely just going to add to that rather than disagree too much with them. Or you are someone who plays computer role-playing games or MMOs and have heard about these tabletop games and want to give them a look. The first thing I would do to a new player is tell them to check out the local gaming store. And the reason for this is twofold. One, you get a very good idea of what's out there in terms of role-playing games, because your local gaming store will have a good cross-section of games in there. And the other thing that a gaming store will have usually is some kind of bulletin board, or local gaming groups will put up little posters up on doors and so on, advertising themselves. And it's a great way to actually meet fellow gamers. And it's usually, I think, the best way to start gaming is to get in a group. Failing that, it means buying your own rule system. And I offer these thoughts. There are people, and they are on here, who will espouse one particular system over another. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to state specific systems too much. I'm going to give a couple of examples, but I'm not going to say this is the one, that isn't. What I would say is there are two facets, as far as I'm concerned, in picking your first rule system. One, get a rule system that's very simple and straightforward. There are plenty out there. Some of them are freely available as downloadable PDFs off the internet, such as Dungeon Slayer, Dark Dungeon, Barbarians of Lemuria, Mazes and Minotaurs, to name but a few, D6 Fantasy. You can either get them directly from websites, just you do a search, or from PDF download stores like RPG Now and Drive-Thru RPG. And they are a great way of introducing role-playing. I know some people would argue, and I think there's a lot of merit to this argument, that it doesn't really matter if the system is quite complex, because people who play computer role-playing games or MMOs are quite used to complicated rules. And I would agree with almost everything said there. Almost. I would only stress this as a sort of warning against. Whether we like it or not, whether we truly acknowledge it in a conscious way or not, we do, I believe, honestly have a direct difference between rules that we see on a computer screen in a computer game and rules we see in a book. We compartmentalize our brains. It's very odd, but we all do it. And my worry is, whilst I fully appreciate that Pathfinder is probably no more complex than your average computer role-playing game when you get right down to the mechanics, or D&D 4th edition, or 3.5, or anything from the OGL, I think it's different to present someone a game and let them play, and they play as they learn. And if you're part of a group, then okay, go for it. You know, if you're part of a group and they're playing Pathfinder, you learn Pathfinder by Pathfinder. If you're learning D&D 4th edition, go and learn Pathfinder. Yes, that is my one caveat. I will do a video on miniatures. I would say it is better to learn the basics, the foundation of role playing. And I think that's better achieved with a simpler game, a more straightforward game, even if it's one of the retro clones which I mentioned earlier. And then once you've got the foundation down, then go and buy D&D 3.5 or 4th edition if you're really a masochist, or get Pathfinder or Savage Worlds or whatever you're kind of interested in getting a hold of. So that would be my first thing. Get something that's simple and straightforward. The other thing I would say is get something you're actually interested in. Now there's two ways of looking at this. They're sort of entwined. Either get a good, simple, straightforward game in a genre that you love, or if it's a tie-in to a specific line, a book series, TV series, movie series that you enjoy, and it's a simple, straightforward system, go for that. The reason being, very simply, for both of them, is that as a matter of course, we tend to show more enthusiasm, we're more likely to take in the rules, we're more likely to get excited by them and learn them if we're engaged. And if you're learning Pathfinder or basic D&D or some of the other fantasy games I mentioned earlier, fine. But if you're more of a sci-fi fan, it's not going to engage you as much as getting a hold of, say, D6 Space or the old D6 Star Wars or the Serenity RPG or Stars Without Number. These are games that are very simple. Some of them are out of print, but you can get them reasonably if you shop around secondhand. And Stars Without Number you can actually download from drivethrurpg.com for nothing. And you're more likely to enjoy the game and learn the game if it's something you're passionate about. And those are really my two caveats for that. Those are my 2 points. Get a good, simple, straightforward game system and get it in a genre that you love. And if you do that, you'll have a great first experience, or at least you will have a better first experience than if your first experience is a really complex rule system that maybe bombards you with too much choice, which is my problem with actually pointing you towards something like Pathfinder or D&D 3.5. It's not that they're particularly difficult in terms of their mechanics, you know, what die you roll and when. They're quite straightforward. The rules are quite straightforward. There's just so much choice. It's got pages of it. It can bamboozle you. Which is why I don't think they're really good beginners games. Other people will argue otherwise. I've listened to their arguments. There's a lot of merit to those arguments. I'm not knocking those arguments. It's just I don't quite agree with them, which is fine. You know, it's role playing. We all got an opinion. You know, in my opinion, Castle Wolkenstein should be pretty much mandatory, but you know, never gonna happen. So hey. So what I would say to new players is get a good system. It doesn't have to be particularly well supported, although well supported ones are better. Get a good core rulebook. There's plenty out there. There's a lot of good simple rule systems out there. Savage Worlds is reasonably straightforward as a game. I think that could be a good beginner's game. Anything that uses the Cortex line from Margaret Weis Productions, uni system, particularly the cinematic uni system, which is used in games like Buffy and Angel and Army of Darkness and Ghosts of Albion is they're very good systems as well. Older style games, I'll still stand up proud and tall and say basic D&D or one of the retro clones that emulate basic D&D is a perfectly good starter game. I really do. I think it's a perfectly good starter game, and why not? The D6 system, which powered Star Wars, the original Star Wars, which if you can find that secondhand, that's worth getting a hold of. But as I say, D6 Fantasy, D6 Space, D6 Adventure, which allows you to do sort of pulp action, sort of 20th century stuff. They're all free to grab from drive-thrurpg.com. No, I'm not an advert, I'm just pointing you in the way. And they're worth your time. They're very simple systems. The only problem with the D6 ones is they have no generic. They really are generic. There's no setting, so they're a little more work for a beginner GM to use. But the actual rule systems are solid, simple, straightforward, and because you use D6s, you get them anywhere. Also, the other thing about stores, going back to them, the other thing about stores is a good store will sell you what you need rather than just sell you the biggest item in the shop. That's when you know you've got to a good store. When they're not pointing you in the direction of the most expensive item, they're pointing you in the direction of the one that will suit you, because they see it as buy that now, get that later, which is fairly good. I mean, I sadly don't go into stores as much as I used to now, because I buy a lot online, because it's just more convenient. But for a beginner, I would urge you to find a gaming shop. I really would, because they're far better places. You'll learn more about role-playing and see a better example, a good cross-section of role-playing games by going into a shop than you will going on to Amazon. That's not in any way being derisory to Amazon or Drive-thrurpg or any other online shop. It's just, it's easier to get a broad canvas look at what's going on in gaming if you walk into a gaming shop. It's far better if you're a beginner to do that. So that's my thoughts as a starter. I'll probably do some individual videos on some of the rule systems I've mentioned. But that's my starter for 10, as they say. So this is Ambus now, and talk to you again.